3 million years ago, in North America came Equus. The fleet, big-hearted athlete of the plains, ranging and roaming, this predecessor to the modern horse, traversed the Bering Land Bridge and eventually reached Europe, the Middle East, and Northern Africa. Suddenly, 10,000 years ago, everything changed.
What happened to the North American horse is a mystery.
They disappear.
Then, in 1519, the Spanish conquistador Hernando Cortés reached the Americas and marched against the Aztec Empire.
The horse returned to its native habitat.
Of his success, Cortés said, "We owe it all to God and the horse." Legend has it that during Cortés's voyage to the New World, a foal was born in the belly of his ship. When it arrived, the young horse escaped. As Cortés's army marched on, 6 more horses ran off. When the 6 happened onto the one, a new band formed and they headed for El Norte, the land of their origin. They swept like a fast-moving secret, first partnering with the tribes.
It gave rise to a whole new culture, a Northern Plains horse culture.
In 1775, at midnight, a Mustang named Brown Beauty delivered news to the world. On her back was Paul Revere, and within the year, the colonies became the United States of America.
Then came settlers from the east, blazing new trails and building new cities. The horse became the standard bearer for how man defines energy and the engines that drive us, horsepower.
And one day the buffalo were gone, and the Indians had vanished. And victorious men galloped the plain on their steeds.
But not all had been tamed. Vast rivers of horse still ran the plain. They flowed into the deserts and canyons, at home on the range.
They reoccupied the niche that had been sitting there waiting for them.
Unfortunately, some came to see the horse as money on the hoof.
They would chase the horses with airplanes and then with trucks.
Horses were shot by the hundreds of thousands for dog food. You'd get several $100s a horse.
Others were shipped off to foreign wars.
300,000 horses were rounded up between the Boer War and the end of World War I.
By mid-century, a flourishing population that had once been 2 million wild horses was once again pushed to the brink of extinction, then a sign of hope.
Folks call me Wild Horse Annie because I'm responsible for the act of Congress prohibiting airplane roundups of wild horses on the public lands.
And while the wild Mustang still calls the American West its home, the debate over its future continues.
Some of these herds are so small, they are genetically unsustainable.
We need to maintain range conditions.
We need the roundup stopped.
The numbers do need to be controlled.
It's never too late to do the right thing.
The BLM had sacrificed the interests of wild horses.
We're getting dangerously close to not having any more wild horses.
And yet an ever-increasing number of wild horses continue to be rounded up, shipped to points unknown, and forever marked with the one thing that says they are no longer free.
My dream always starts the same. I sense something coming. A stallion gallops so close, he almost runs me down. I feel the ground shake and the wind on my face. I want to touch him, but I can't. This is a wild horse. That's when I see the other horses coming. They're so beautiful. Sometimes it's a small band, but other times it's an entire herd. They're wild horses running free, and I want to be with them. The first horse I ever loved was a Mustang. He was captured in Nevada. The owners of my barn adopted him. They chose him out of 1,000 other Mustangs. I'd never seen a wild horse before. He was afraid of people. I wanted to take care of him, and maybe even ride him someday.
Start colts, get them gentle, get them ready to ride. Last year my brother and I started around 200 horses, maybe a dozen of them were Mustangs. I work with horses every day, but I try not to own them. I think buying a horse is the cheapest part of owning one. First horse I started for money was a Mustang. I was 12 years old. You start them like any other horse, but they're a little more complicated. Domestic horses, they've been bred to work with people. Mustangs, they can be pretty tough. They watch out for themselves. Like my dad used to say, we don't know much about starting colts, but we don't know anything about anything else. The general public, they see a horse kicking, and they don't really understand or realize the amount of power that's there. I mean, the truth is, they could kill you. Not even mean to. Mustangs, they're so aware of their surroundings, they can feel a snowflake land on their butt in a blizzard. The only reason we use a flag is to try and get him used to something. We're not trying to scare him. I just have Jim catch him by a hind foot, keep me a little more safe, just so I don't have to take the chance of getting hurt.
They only paid $125 to adopt him. I've never had a horse of my own, but I can see how this could work out. When they get him gentled, I'm going to try to buy him. This could be my horse.
A little tight. There's a lot of stories about Mustangs, but the truth, it's somewhere between romance and reality.
I've loved horses since I was a little girl. I rode them, drew pictures of them, and wished for a horse of my own at every birthday. The only horses I knew were domestic horses, and I saw how people and horses could have an amazing connection. But when I learned about horses in the wild, I realized how the relationship they have with each other are what makes this connection with us possible. As a wildlife biologist, I traveled around the West, studied them for years, and eventually I became a wild horse advocate. The bond between horses is one of the strongest among all mammals. Most animals come together to breed. The males leave and the mothers raise the babies. But with horses, they stay together as a family band, with complex social relationships. The mares are loyal to their stallion and devoted to each other. The stallion provides protection in the wild and keeps the family together and the baby safe. Young bachelor stallions spend time play fighting and establishing a hierarchy amongst themselves. Later, they'll have to fight to win mares of their own. These powerful hierarchies establish enduring family bonds. Uniquely, horses have allowed humans to experience that kind of bond with them. Observing wild horses in their natural state on the North American land where they evolved millions of years ago, I came to appreciate their true value. They belong here. They have an integral place in the tapestry of the Western landscape.
My family's run cattle here for almost 100 years. Cows are my livelihood. And the best part of ranching is the partnership I have with my horse to work cattle. This is big country, and we need horses now, same as always. They say America was built on the back of a horse. But these days, ranchers are the only folks I know who still use horses to get the job done. I'm a horseman, and I love anything that has to do with horses. This was made by a photographer named Muybridge, who was hired to settle a bet about whether all 4 feet of a horse ever left the ground at the same time. Muybridge was obsessed with figuring it out, so he lined up 24 cameras on a track and set the shutters to fire when the horse ran through. He invented this machine called a zoopraxiscope to study horses in motion. At the very same time, horses were being replaced by machines. This was the first motion picture ever. And I like that it stars a horse.
When I heard about the government's plan to round up the White Mountain wild horses, we formed a team to challenge their claims that horses were damaging the range. The local cattle grazing association was pressuring the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, to remove more horses than ever. They insist that wild horses are overgrazing and damaging the land. Since there are 50 times more cattle than horses on the range, their math is a mystery. We set out to find the White Mountain horses in Wyoming. We saw nothing for days and days. And then we found the herd.
This is a pretty big ranching operation. It includes a grazing lease for about 20,000 acres of government land. I wouldn't call myself an environmentalist because I hear plenty from them that I don't like. But I love this land. Having cattle out here is the best use for it. There's plenty of wildlife out there, including antelope, deer, jackrabbits. You name it. The Mustangs are another story. They're basically trespassing, and they compete with my cattle for grass. It's my belief that if you leave them alone, they'll overrun the place and in no time destroy the range. The range is for cattle by right. Back in the day when they had too many Mustangs, they'd just go out and shoot them. These days, it's officially the Bureau of Land Management's, or the BLM's, job to round them up and keep the numbers down.
Luke is doing everything he can to build trust.
Looks like somebody's got a crush. This one could be a heartbreaker. Trying to show him there's nothing to be afraid of. He's doing real good. It's just gonna take some time. It's just kind of the way it is. He'll learn though.
Wild horses would have disappeared from the western United States in the 70s if it weren't for the passion of one woman. Velma Braun Johnston, Wild Horse Annie.
I'm doing a report for school on my personal hero, Wild Horse Annie. If it wasn't for her, America's wild horses would have disappeared forever. She got thousands of children across the nation to write letters to Congress to protect the Mustangs. It was quite a scene when Annie personally delivered tens of thousands of letters to a live session of Congress. They were so moved that they voted unanimously to pass the Wild Horse and Burro Act of 1971.
Congress finds and declares that wild free-roaming horses and burros are living symbols of the historic pioneer spirit of the West and enrich the lives of the American people.
Am I going to be susceptible to pressure? Am I going to be influenced by a bunch of children? Am I going to support a bill because kids are sentimental about wild horses? You bet your cowboy boots I am.
The law banned hunting and private roundups of wild horses and made the BLM responsible for their protection and management. Now, instead of protecting our Mustangs, they round them up and destroy the herds. We need another Wild Horse Annie.
It broke my heart to watch what happened. The BLM scoured the land with helicopters, searching for every last horse. Young foals struggled to keep up, and older horses fell behind. They were chased nearly 20 miles over several hours, stampeded into traps. Terrorized. Family bands are destroyed, mares separated from folds. It's a brutal process. Some horses are horribly injured and others die. Despite our protests and our legal challenges, we couldn't stop the roundup. This was the day the White Mountain horses lost their freedom. Forever. Torn from the range, now property of the U.S. government. Wild no more.
I like a horse that's bred to work with people. Because it's easier to train, it's just more economical. It's true, you can train most any horse, wild or domestic. They have the capacity to connect with people. I guess the reward of getting that trust with a Mustang is pretty cool. But you better have the time and know what you're doing. Mustangs aren't for beginners. That girl's here, she's as green as that horse. I just don't want to see her get hurt.
Look what I made you, Pegasus. Now that I know what your life was like before, I can see why you're scared and fighting. But it's going to be okay. You've just got to trust us. This is your new home. When you're ready, you're gonna fit in really well around here.
Every BLM roundup ends the same. Families are torn apart. They are sorted by age and sex, and then all the stallions are castrated. The horses lose the two things that matter most, their families and their freedom. While a few of these horses will be adopted, the majority will be sent to long-term government holding, where the lucky ones will get to live out their lives. What really gets me is all of this management wouldn't be necessary if the BLM would manage the herds on the range. The BLM continues to treat them like livestock headed to slaughter. They are run through chutes, squeezed into a steel box, and flipped onto their sides. In the wild, horses wear their hooves down naturally. But in captivity, their hooves have to be trimmed, all because they have nowhere to run. In the last 10 years, the BLM has stockpiled over 50,000 Mustangs in government holding. They ship horses around the country, and they hire contractors to feed and care for the horses. The cost of the BLM's failed program has risen to nearly $80 million a year. Incredibly, there are now almost twice as many horses in holding than living free on the range. And every year, they just find out more. The captive Mustangs receive a brand when they lose their freedom. Within the brand is a code that uniquely identifies each horse. Even with this distinctive mark emblazoned on their neck, clearly denoting them as protected by law, the BLM sells them by the truckload for only $10 apiece. And truckloads of horses just disappear.
There's a market worldwide for horse meat, but Americans can't stand the thought of it. And as far as I'm concerned, real men don't eat horses.
All the times I waited patiently for you, and you'll do just what.
Even though 40 years ago, Wild Horse Annie saved the wild horses, they're in danger again. I'm taking a stand for American Mustangs. We have to save them. That's why I'm doing this report, so people will know.
We created a wild horse sanctuary. We rescued a herd that had been taken from the wild. The sanctuary was designed to be a model for better on-the-range management of wild horses. Our goal, show the BLM a better way, a more humane and less expensive way that doesn't require rounding them up and removing them from the range. In regions like ours, where predators have been decimated and the ecosystem is out of balance, we use a birth control vaccine on the mares, which keeps the population from growing too quickly. The BLM could be doing this with horses on the range. This method preserves the essential social dynamics of the herd and the behaviors that make wild horses wild.
Hi, Luke.
Hey.
How's it going?
All right.
Can I help you unsaddle him?
Okay. You can just turn him out, make sure he gets some feed and water. That'd be good.
Okay.
Hello? I don't know. He's got a lot of wild in him. You sure know how to pick him.
My report is called Blood on the Road. Wild Horse Annie grew up struggling with polio. She had lots of health problems and she was shy, but she dreamed of life on the ranch and true love. And eventually, both of those dreams came true when she fell in love with a cowboy. Then one day, she saw blood on the road dripping from the back of a truck. And when she followed it, it changed her life forever. There were wounded horses jammed tightly together, and a trampled colt, and horses with their hooves completely torn off, and a stallion that had both eyes gouged out by mustangers. But Annie knew that if people understood, then they would care. So she spoke up. Wild horses were being rounded up and taken off federal land. And the government was supposed to take care of them for all the American people. And Annie made sure they knew it. Annie was amazing. She didn't act alone, though. She had help from people all over the country, including kids that made calls and wrote letters to Congress so that wild horses would be treated with respect. How can we make sure that wild horses are part of our future forever? They only have a voice if we speak up for them. Right, Topper? Yeah, you have a voice. A loud one. Yeah. Ready? Let's go.
My grandfather was a mustanger. He could roll a cigarette in one hand and hold the reins in the other. He captured mustangs for the killing plant, which was for good money back then.
This is my report, all about Wild Horse Annie.
When he talked about it in later years, you could see how it affected him.
Come on.
He had a lot of regret about that. It's not too much different now. They break up the herds, cram them into little pens, and bale the hay. They look like a bunch of wood ticks in prison. My grandpa wasn't proud of his mustanging days. The bottom line was, he was in a tough situation. Had to feed his family. It's what folks did back then.
Wild horses can cover as many as 30 miles a day. They need a lot of land because they run so far and so fast. They're very strong and sure-footed, but parts of a horse are also delicate, like a deer, like the wings of birds. Horses remember everything that happens to them, good or bad, and some injuries, well, they never recover.
Americans have always loved horses, the wild horse included, but there's a battle raging over whether or not they have a right to run free on our nation's public land.
You all want beef on the table. How the heck do you think it gets there, huh? You think it gets raised in the back of a grocery store?
No. Most beef is raised on commercial feedlots in the Midwest. Less than 3% of American beef is from cows grazing on public land. It wouldn't change the price of a Big Mac 1 penny if privately owned cows were removed from public land.
At the BLM, we have to balance the interests of livestock, wildlife, energy, and even recreational folks. We aim for healthy horses on a healthy range.
They got to deal with a bunch of horse-hugging, menopausal, do-gooder hippies.
You're supposed to manage public lands for the benefit of all Americans, not just a handful of special interests. Wild horses have more right to be out on the range than the millions of domestic-raised cattle for private profit. Horses are a native species, and current BLM policy is managing them to extinction.
Our delicate ecosystem cannot survive the impact of all these wild horses.
That's absurd. What about the impact of millions of cattle eating their way through the ecosystem?
What if the pie was divided so that livestock, mining, and energy didn't dominate every decision?
We also have to manage resources like water carefully.
You're sucking a huge amount of water from aquifers to support mining and fracking, and then you show the media a photo of a handful of wild horses standing around a little dried-up spring as if the horses are causing the water shortage. People are smarter than that.
At the BLM, we do what we have the funding to do.
Half the land set aside for wild horse habitat has been taken away, so the few remaining horses are being squeezed onto smaller and smaller pieces of land.
The roundups are cruel. It's not okay. How about treating wild horses like the national treasure they are?
400 years ago, wild horses have roamed the western plains, and man has set out to capture and tame them ever since.
Steady. Like Ford Mustang.
If you think it would take wild horses to make you change your brand of cigarette, you're right. You're ready for Mustang.
How much you want for it? I'll pay you. I'll give you $200. Is that enough?
I own everything in this country from here to there. Gonna leave most of it to the nation, really. What I'm gonna give you is a 500 cow spread on the upper Green River.
How much are the dog food companies paying for Mustang meat now?
Have your men drop their guns and you can leave quietly.
There is no justification for the inhumane way that wild horses are treated now. A foal in the wild is born into a family of horses and doesn't need people. The moment we take them off the range, they become dependent on us, and we must take care of them for the rest of their lives. But if we manage population growth as needed on the range, the horses can live free and in balance with other wildlife. Wild horses have been exploited and mismanaged for over 100 years. They've already been removed from half the land Congress designated as their habitat. Even though our government has the responsibility of protecting them, wild horses are treated like pests. There has to be reform of the BLM wild horse program, or Mustangs will only live in holding and sanctuaries. The American people value these horses in their natural state, wild and free on the range. I only knew Wild Horse Annie at the end of her life. She was grateful that so many people, including thousands of school children, stood with her to save these beautiful animals. But in the end, she realized that the federal protections would only work if they included a humane way to manage population growth. Her work is not done.
Isn't it something? Movies started with a horse. But here's what gets me. The debate was whether all 4 feet left the ground at the same time. Now, you have to slow everything down in order to see what's right in front of us. To see this magical moment.
There's this magical moment
when horses fly.
When horses fly. In mythology, Pegasus was born in the place where thunder and lightning came from. Athena tamed him, and when his hoofs hit the earth, springs came out of the ground and he lifted up his wings and flew.
Wild and free, these horses once roamed over thousands of acres. Now their world is reduced to holding pens and steel fences. Standing around on the frozen ground waiting to be fed. Barely recognizable as the majestic horses we tracked and photographed over the summer. Now they look defeated, eyes dull. Families broken apart. 5 months after the roundup, the BLM held a public adoption. This was the first time they granted us access to the Rock Springs facility to look for the White Mountain horses. We could only find a few young ones from the herd. When we pressed for information on the fate of the others, the BLM provided very little information. They claimed that they were still here, and that any missing horses were at facilities in Nevada, Utah, Colorado, or Oklahoma. Finally, a year after the roundup, when the BLM was forced to turn over their internal records, receipts indicated that the BLM had sold over 1,700 horses to Tom Davis at $10 a head. Davis, a vocal proponent of horse slaughter, claims these horses were given to local ranchers or hauled to Mexico to be used for the film industry. None of these horses could be accounted for, and it's believed they went to slaughter. I will always remember them, the way they were in the wild.
Today's the day. They're going to try to ride Pegasus. I don't think he's ready.
I'm trying to get this horse to trust me and have some more confidence. Trusting a Persian goes against the defenses Mustangs have built up over generations in the wild. We're gonna want to keep facing up if he does. Once in a while you'll get a nice one that's easy to start, but usually it's a long process. It's about ready to me. I'll be able to ride him, but there's no guarantee it's gonna be easy. Keep driving until he's up there.
I feel bad for Pegasus. He's been fighting so hard, but he'll have to give up.
He's getting a lot better. Ghost terms. I don't know why I got that little string on there. That's on the forever. I don't know why. Thinking about it. It's fixing to happen. You're a little bit kicky. Sure.
You've changed. I didn't know what it would take, what it would mean to break a horse like you. You'll be like the other horses. You were mine when you were free. Last night, my dream was different. I was in a great herd of mustangs at sunset. An old stallion stood apart from his herd. He barely moved. This is a wild horse who lived his whole life on the range. A Mustang at the end of his life. Born in the wild, meant to die free. So, did you find a home for him?
Taking him to Paso Robles, yeah.
He'll be a nice horse for somebody.
You bet. I'll have a good home.
You think you'll come back here?
Maybe someday. Maybe someday.
Coming, Luke?
Yeah, I'm coming. Nice to meet you.
You too.
Take care.
Take care of Pegasus.
Pegasus?
That's what I named him.
Sounds like a pretty good name.
Coming, Luke?
Yeah, I'm coming. Take care.
I'll never forget Pegasus. Someday, I'll have a horse of my own. A horse to ride. There are people in our country who care about keeping wild horses wild. I'm one of them. Pegasus will be okay, but I'd rather see him running, with nothing but freedom on his back.
Yeah, say it's alright, but I won't forget all the times I waited patiently for you, and you'll do just what you choose to do, and I will be alone again tonight, my dear. funny thing. Somebody said to me, you know that I could be in love with almost everyone. And I think that people are the greatest fun. And I will be alone again tonight, my dear. Somebody said to me, you know that I could be in love with almost everyone. I think that people are the greatest fun. And I will be alone again tonight, my dear. Somebody said to me, you know that I could be in love with almost everyone. And I think that people are the greatest fun. And I will be alone again tonight, my dear. Somebody said to me, you know that I could be in love with almost everyone. And I think that people are the greatest fun. And I will be alone again tonight, my dear. Somebody said to me, you know that I could be in love with almost everyone. I think that people